After 2.5 months in a workshop, Skadi had conquered her first mountain. A 20% hill on loose rock tested her, but she withstood the challenge. She carried us to the top of the mountain and to the coast. Now we were ready to keep exploring the land of the Vikings, ready to go deeper into the north. Norway has one of the longest coastlines in the world. Over 50,000 kilometers of fjords, inlets, and islands. Up here, ferries aren't just transportation, they're a part of the road itself. A moment to step out, to watch the landscape slide by from a different perspective. This ferry took us to Leka, a beautiful island off the coast of Trøndelag. It didn't look quite like the Norway we'd been driving through before. The colors were different. Orange earth, red rock. Dry, open landscapes. For a moment, it almost felt like we'd crossed the Atlantic, like somewhere in the American Midwest, or the setting of an old Western movie. There was something about the openness of it, the emptiness, the colors, and the feeling that there was nowhere we needed to be. We just drove, stopping when we wanted to, getting out when something caught our eye. And slowly, the pace of the journey began to change. He had spent so much time trying to get further north, but up here, we started caring a little less about getting anywhere, and a little more about simply being there. By the evening, we found somewhere to stay. Remote, quiet. Just us, the seagulls, and the landscape. We cooked outside. We sat down and watched as the light changed. The sun moved towards the horizon, but it never really left. Just a little lower, a little softer, but still there. An orange sky that never turned dark. A sun that barely dipped below the horizon. It was strange after spending so many years chasing sunsets. Here, the sunset lasted forever. The next morning, Leka was awake again. A completely new day. So we packed up Skadi and went exploring. We drove around the island, found new roads, new views, but the colors, those colors, were still the same. Every turn looked different from the one before. The same orange earth, the same open landscape, but completely different in the morning light. We could have stayed much longer, but eventually it was time to leave. So we packed up Skadi, went back to the ferry. North was still calling, and there was still a lot of road ahead. Another ferry, another crossing. This is one of the things I love about traveling along the coast of Helgeland. The road doesn't always feel like a road. Sometimes it becomes the sea. We stood outside again, engines rumbling below us, salt in the air, and mountains scattered across the horizon. By the time we reached Herøy, we were looking for somewhere to stop. Not somewhere impressive, just somewhere quiet. Somewhere we could stay for the night. And then we found it. A completely remote piece of coastline. A dry archipelago, waiting for the tide to return. The landscape slowly filled with water, and around us there was almost nothing. Except the sheep. They had clearly decided that it was their home, and judging by how little attention they paid to us, I don't think they were impressed by our arrival. We walked among them, they kept grazing, we kept walking, and somehow it all felt perfectly normal. This is what we had come north for. Not necessarily the famous places, not the places on the postcards, just finding somewhere beautiful and being allowed to stay there. There's something special about cooking outside, especially when you're completely surrounded by wilderness. The luxury isn't the kitchen, it isn't the equipment. It's having everything you need in the back of a Jeep and being able to turn it into a proper meal anywhere. We cooked, we talked, we ate, and for a little while, the rest of the world didn't exist. Another morning, another ferry. But now it had become a part of the rhythm. Pack, drive, wait, cross, and keep going. We had driven all day, tired and just looking for somewhere to sleep. We found a spot on the map. Didn't look like anything special, just somewhere close to the road where we could stop for the night. So we went. And then we arrived. Out in front of us were the islands, one after another, stretching far into the distance. It was one of those places you could never have planned. No expectation, no destination, just a random point on a map. That place turned into one of the most beautiful camps of the entire trip. The next day, we woke up right next to the sea. The birds were tweeting and the sun was shining. We packed up Skadi and kept exploring. Helgeland has no shortage of places that looked impossible. That day, it truly felt like we lived in a Norwegian postcard. The next day, we drove away from the sea and deep into the heart of the Norwegian wilderness to a village called Sulitjelma. We had driven north to get away from the Mediterranean heat, away from the heat waves we'd experienced in Italy and Greece the year before. But now we were in Northern Norway, well above the Arctic Circle, experiencing 35 degrees. 35 here. It was almost absurd. But the strange thing was, even with the heat, the landscape still felt completely different from anything we'd seen before. Mountains, rivers, open valleys, and roads disappearing far into the distance. Sulitjelma is a village rich both in nature and in history. Here, in these mountains, 100 years ago, was the largest mining operation in all of Scandinavia. The village was home to over 3,000 people. In 1907, the workers carried out one of the most defiant strikes in all of Norway's history. This also gave the birth to the first labor union in all of Northern Norway. It feels truly special to be surrounded by nature and history as strong as this. Somewhere along these roads, we started heading south. Not because the journey was over, just because eventually every journey has to turn around. On the way south, we found another road, a long mountain road, leading further and further into the landscape. We found our camp next to a river, cold, clear, refreshing. Just what was needed after a heat wave. At this point, we had learned something. The best camps were rarely the ones we planned, they were the ones we stumbled across. The river kept running beside us, the mountains stayed still, and for a little while, we had the whole valley to ourselves. The long journey back had begun, but somehow it didn't feel like the end. We still had roads to drive, mountains to cross, ferries to catch, and miles between us and home. further south we went, the more familiar the landscape became. But we weren't rushing, there was no reason to. After everything we'd seen, we had learned to enjoy the road itself. And nowhere was that more true than the coastal road of 17. The beautiful alternative to the E6. A road that winds through some of the most spectacular landscapes in Trøndelag and Nordland. Mountains, sea, islands, ferries. Some roads take you somewhere. The coastal road 17 is somewhere. For the first time in 3 weeks, it was cold and dark. Really dark. After all those days of endless light, this was the first time it truly felt like the end.